It's 4 p.m. on a Sunday here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Connyoung. It's been 103 hours or more than 4 days since a nearly 7,000-ton Sewol-ho ferry sank into waters with more than 470 people on board. 56 have been confirmed dead so far. Nearly 250 remain unaccounted for. Now, search and rescue operations have continued for the last 4 days, but with little results as no survivors have been found since. Now, let's go live to our Yoo Li-an. She is at Paengmok-hang Harbor, just 20 kilometers from where the Sewol-ho ferry capsized and the focal point of search and rescue operations. Li-an, there are an increasing number of bodies being retrieved. We are seeing the death toll rise by the hour, but no change in the number of survivors.
Connyoung, the death toll here is rising by the hour, like you just said. The latest number we have got here is 56. The identities of these new bodies that have been received are still not yet known. The people here are trying to find out more about those bodies. Now, ever since last night, when the Coast Guard here was able to break into the windows of the vessel for the first time, dozens of bodies are being recovered from the vessel. Also, there are special tents set up behind me where DNA samples are being taken from the bodies to help with the identification process. And after that, the bodies are being transferred to the hospital. Now, I also do have some unfortunate news. A Navy officer has died yesterday. He was taking part in the rescue operations on Wednesday, the day of the accident, but he was hit on his head and he fell into a coma and he was transferred to the hospital right away, but he has unfortunately died. Connyoung?
Right. What many of us here in the country, as well as all around the world, are keen on finding out is also the progress efforts there. Bring us up to speed on the search and rescue operations currently taking place.
Connyoung, there are 2 underwater drones along with 2 U.S. technical officials that are expected to arrive here at the Paengmok-hang Harbor tonight. Also, 5 guidelines have been installed on the vessel today, and the divers are using those guidelines to get into the vessel quickly. Now, the emergency headquarters here has also announced that over 560 divers, along with 204 vessels and 34 aircraft, are all being dispatched to the site of the accident to carry out the search and rescue efforts. Now, as for the weather conditions, it's looking extremely nice out here today. We're seeing clear skies, just winds going at about 5 meters per second, and tides is just as high as 1 meter. The nice weather is definitely helping out the conditions here for the rescue team. Connyoung?
All right, Li-an, we are all holding out hope for some good news, which has been so hard to come by in recent days here in Korea. Our Yoo Li-an reporting live from Paengmok-hang Harbor near the ferry disaster site. And it looks like we're getting new developments from the joint investigation team investigating on this ferry disaster. For that, let's go over to our Hyung-kyung. She is standing by at the news center. Hyung-kyung, so what are we finding out?
Well, Connyoung, we are getting reports that the joint investigation team found out that the Sewol-ho ferry and the Jindo vessel traffic service, which serves as a marine traffic control tower, communicated for about 30 minutes before the crew members started to escape from the sinking ferry. Officials say the ferry contacted the control center at 9:06 a.m. Wednesday, and then they've made 11 contacts for 31 minutes. The control tower ordered nearby vessels to throw life vests into the ocean. It also told the sinking ferry to start taking emergency measures at about 9:24 a.m. A senior crew member apparently was contacting the control tower, but whether the captain, who's facing tremendous criticism for escaping the ship before the passengers, was in the steering room is not known yet. And the last time the ferry made contact with the Jindo Control Center was at 9:37 a.m. and reports say that's when the crew members started to leave the ferry before the passengers. And what needs to be found out more is why the captain didn't inform the passengers promptly about the situation during that 30-minute time and why the crew members evacuated before the passengers. A recording file or a transcript of what was said between the Sewol-ho ferry and the control tower is expected to be released sometime soon. So as soon as I get those, I will make sure to have them available.
Right, and we will be looking forward to that. Now, the government continues its efforts to assist the victims and family members affected by the accident.
That's right. Earlier in the day, Presidential Office spokesman Min Kyung-uk told reporters that President Park Geun-hye will likely approve declaring Ansan in the Gyeonggi-do province near Seoul and Jindo Island in the southwestern Jeollanam-do province as special disaster zones. Danwon High School, where most of the student passengers on the ferry were from, is located in Ansan, and Jindo Island is, of course, where the Paengmok-hang Harbor, the nearest harbor from the sunken ferry, is. Now, once President Park gives the green light, which could come as early as later today, then the government can provide funds to the rescue and search operations and give financial assistance to the victims and their families, as well as those that are still waiting for their loved ones to return. Connyoung?
All right, Hyung-kyung, thank you for that update, and I'm sure you will keep us updated on the latest developments throughout the day. When an accident happens, there is a window of time when the chance of survival is the highest. For many on board this Sewol-ho ferry, that time came and went while waiting inside the vessel while help was right outside. Our Shin Se-min finds out why.
The first 30 minutes to an hour of a disastrous accident is called the golden time. It is a period of time in which crucial decisions must be made in order to ensure a better chance of survival for those in peril. As more information comes out about the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry and the events directly after its accident, the more it seems that those in charge, that those responsible for making sure everyone on board were safe, were derelict in their duties. The message says, please contact the maritime police. The ship is in danger and it is listing. It was made at 8:55 a.m. Wednesday from the now sunken ferry. And it was the first and the only call for help. 3 minutes later, the police report an official distress situation of the ferry, and 2 minutes after that, 9 a.m., an announcement tells passengers to stay where they are inside the ferry. Half an hour later, 100 or so naval and civilian ships descend on the ferry's location to help with the unfolding crisis. The first rescue helicopter arrives at the scene at around 9:40 a.m. and the rescue team is dispatched. But passengers in the Sewol-ho ferry were told to stay put inside their cabins. At 10:25 a.m., the passenger ferry has listed over 90 degrees, and within an hour, it has completely capsized. In the critical time directly after the ferry encountered trouble, the captain and crew hesitated to deploy lifeboats. If they had stayed on board to save those they were responsible for, this might very well be a different story today. A story of survival instead of monumental tragedy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, many of the families of the missing have been camping out in the Jindo Indoor Auditorium nearby this accident site since Wednesday. And let's connect live to our Kwon So-ah. She has also been with them for the last couple of days right there. So what is the current situation there like?
Hi again, Connyoung. Around 30 minutes ago, the representatives of the families of the missing people have briefed the families here at the auditorium on further demands that they made concerning rescue operations. They said shuttle buses from the auditorium to the Paengmok-hang Harbor will now run every 20 minutes instead of 30. Also, that ships will be provided for families who wish to get closer to the rescue operations themselves. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won was scheduled to talk to the families of the missing here in the auditorium. That meeting, however, has been delayed a bit. Now, overnight, families and friends of the people on board the Sewol-ho ferry went out into the streets in anger directed at the government, shouting that they would go to the presidential office of Cheongwade to air their grievances, but they were held back by police from leaving. Now, Prime Minister Chung came to the site a bit before 3 a.m. to control the situation, but found himself in a row with the families for around 3 hours.
Right, there must be a lot of emotions going through those distraught families right now, and it's unbearably a long wait for these families and friends. So some of these families have been there camping out in the auditorium for 5 days now. How are they holding up?
Right, Connyoung. The families are going through tons of emotions. They are crying at times and shouting, but right now it seems that most of them are so exhausted that they even find it hard to shed tears. Now, as well as many of them are just staring blankly into two television screens, one showing the rescue operations and one the news, as well as the descriptions of the recovered bodies, which includes their gender, height, clothing, shoes, and other features, which are being provided to them as well. Now, news of the rising death toll has led to more crying and to some passing out, and I saw some being rushed out on stretchers. Now, medical personnel are on 24-hour standby here in what is a very tense and agonizing environment. Connyoung.
And understandably so, this must be some harrowing times for these families. Thank you so for that. That was our Kwon So-ah reporting live from the Jindo Indoor Auditorium, where families have been waiting for their loved ones to return for 5 days now. Now, let's try getting a better sense of what must be going through the minds of those who survived. I mean, those who went through this traumatic experience, as well as the mental and physical status of the families of the missing. Dr. Alice Hyun-Kyung-Tan joins us live via Skype. She is a medical doctor at Seoul-based Samsung Medical Center. Dr. Tan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the focus has largely been on the accident itself and search and rescue operations, but also critical are the psychological status of those who survived this tragic accident. Now, based on your medical expertise, what are they going through?
Right, so most likely they're going through some degree of post-traumatic stress, and that would include having flashbacks, nightmares, difficulty sleeping. There might be some sense of anger, depression, also a sense of numbness as well. This is all considered a natural reaction to trauma. However, post-traumatic stress can be associated with very severe depression, anxiety, and sometimes thoughts of suicide as well. And if this is the case, this needs to be considered a medical emergency. And so the survivor needs to be brought to medical attention immediately.
Right, a lot of attention is required for them. Now, Dr. Tan, also of concern here at this point is the quickly deteriorating health conditions of the families of those missing. They have been camping out, like we reported earlier, at an auditorium nearby the accident site for 5 days now, not being able to eat, sleep, and undergoing this unimaginable amount of stress. How should they be looked after?
Right. So first of all, their physical condition, as you mentioned, they are, I'm sure, very physically drained. And so if they have underlying medical conditions, they need to be tended to. But more grave is their psychological devastation that they're feeling, I'm sure. The families also will be going through some degree of post-traumatic stress. But also those who have discovered that their loved ones have actually deceased, they are probably going through some degree of the grieving process. They're experiencing, I'm sure, denial, anger, depression. Hopefully, they will be able to accept the situation, and after a period of grieving and bereavement, they will be able to return to normal life. But there can be severe depression, anxiety, and anger that may require psychological counseling as well. And so they should be given the opportunity to receive counseling and also ventilate their emotions.
Right, our hearts go out for them, and the general public here in Korea, we have all been following news of this very tragedy. Many of us in disbelief, sadness, and then anger and despair. Now, what as a nation do we need to do to overcome this suffering and move forward?
Yes, I think three things need to be done. First of all, we need to seek closure. In other words, all of those who are missing need to be accounted for. Also, we need answers. How did this happen? Why did this happen? And we need to see that justice has been done to some degree, that those who are responsible for this have been brought to justice. But I think most importantly, we as a nation, as a country, we need to see that these victims did not die in vain, that something positive can be brought out of the disaster in the way of perhaps legislation or improving public awareness regarding public safety issues in all spheres of society.
Definitely some key points that you went over for us. Dr. Alice Hyung-young Tan, medical doctor at Samsung Medical Center in Korea. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's now turn to our Connie Kim as she is standing by at Korea University Ansan Hospital, where the most number of the high school students injured in the accident are being treated. Some of the deceased have also arrived there. Connie, the atmosphere must be incredibly heart-wrenching there.
Right, Connyoung. I'm standing in front of Korea University Ansan Hospital. Now, none of the 6 deceased passengers have returned to their families here, but earlier on this morning, 6 bodies have returned to their families. Now, remember, this is the first time that any Tanwon High School student has been released. Now, inside the funeral hall, I saw some friends of the deceased crying out their friends' names, but we're not sure how many of the bodies recovered today will be transported here, but I'll definitely keep you updated throughout the day.
I hear that there was a press briefing held by Gyeonggi Provincial Office of Education. Give us the details, Connie.
Right, there was a press briefing held earlier in the morning at Ansan Olympic Museum by the Education Office. Now, they confirmed that 23 Tanwon High School students and 4 teachers are dead as of now. 19 students' bodies are located here in the Ansan region, where 4 of them are still left at local hospitals in Jindo Island. A joint investigation headquarters office is set up in cooperation with Ansan City, headed by Gyeonggi Governor Kim Mun-soo, so they can coordinate. The task force team has deployed helicopters, personnel, ambulances, and equipment to speed up the remaining rescue operations at Jindo Island. Now, it plans to set up an emergency task force team on the island to help provide support for the families who are waiting in agony for news on their beloved ones. Back to you, Connyoung.
All right, thank you, Connie. That was our Connie Kim reporting live from Korea University Ansan Hospital, where many of the deceased bodies are heading to and where many of the funerals are being held there. Now, when bodies are recovered, they go through a series of identification procedures. And to speed up the process and help identify the deceased, medical staff down in Korea's southwestern coast have begun collecting DNA samples from the families of the missing. This must be a harrowing time for the families, but our Kim Min-ji reports.
When bodies are recovered, the first procedure is to check the personal belongings of the victim and their physical appearance, such as their height. If the body is able to be identified, the family is contacted so they can confirm with their own eyes. If the body cannot be identified, the body is sent to a nearby hospital for examination, which includes taking DNA samples and fingerprint identification. Blood tests and biopsies are taken if the recovered body has been severely damaged. However, with fears of a sudden rush of bodies being recovered at once and complaints that the procedures have been inefficient, medical experts have begun collecting DNA samples from relatives of the missing passengers. Tents to collect DNA have been set up beside the auditorium, where many families of the missing passengers have been spending sleepless nights, as well as at the Paengmok-hang Harbor near the site of the accident. While rescue divers are putting in great efforts to search for survivors and recover bodies, the time that has passed and the harsh conditions at sea can now make it difficult to identify the bodies. Almost 90% of relatives of the missing have registered their DNA. Although they are still clinging on to hope their loved ones are still alive, some are preparing for the worst.
My wife still wants to believe our child will come back alive, but looking at the situation now, I just hope our child's body comes back soundly at least.
With unfavorable weather and harsh conditions at sea hampering rescue efforts, the physical and mental health of the families are also deteriorating by the minute.
I took care of my niece for 11 years. I'm so upset. I told her to have a safe trip and she said yes. Since then, I've heard nothing.
Navy officials say the DNA samples will be analyzed as soon as possible. The DNA samples will be sent to the National Forensic Center to see if they match with the victims. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
우리도 너희를 보면 포기하지 않을 테니까 너희도 절대 포기하지 마.
The nation is united to share, if not all, the grief of these families who are desperate for more information about their missing loved ones. Some 5,000 volunteers from more than 240 private and religious groups are at the site with the family members, offering necessities and encouragement. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this story.
As days pass by, families who long for their loved ones are growing wary. In times of crisis like these, a warm meal and a helping hand are a great help. Volunteers from various relief organizations came to Shindo Island, where the sunken ferry is located and where family members are gathered to find more about their missing family members.
A lot of families came rushing to site when they heard about the ferry incident. So we're trying to provide necessities while they wait to hear news of their loved ones.
The health of the families is deteriorating as time goes by, as rescue operations are further being delayed. Medicine and medical supplies are running short.
We'll provide medicine and medical supplies until the crisis recedes. We're planning to have a fundraiser so that we can keep renewing the supplies.
The nation is being united in times of crisis. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The thoughts and prayers are not only coming from Korea. The hope for a miracle knows no borders. Messages of support are pouring in from all around the world. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Please join me in praying for the victims of the ferry disaster in Korea and their families. This is what Pope Francis posted on his Twitter account this weekend. The Pope is due to visit Korea in August, becoming the first head of the Catholic Church to make the trip in 25 years. Pope Francis is just one of countless people who are grieving for the victims of the capsized Sewol-ho ferry around the globe. English Premier League football club Manchester United tweeted that, "Our thoughts are with everybody affected by the ferry disaster in South Korea." Arsenal defender Per Mertesacker tweeted, "My compassion to the families and people in Korea being affected from the Sewol accident," adding in Korean that he prays for a miracle. Ahead of her Korea tour next week, British singer Connie Talbot tweeted she's leaving for Korea at such a sad time and said profits from the concert will be directed towards the ferry accident. Over in the Thai capital of Bangkok, at a prayer event hosted by Nation TV, citizens flagged banners and signs with words of condolences and support for the Korean victims. On the other side of the globe in downtown Boston, Korean students from Harvard University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Boston University prayed for the safe rescue of all that were aboard the Sewol-ho ferry. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Regardless of where we are in this Korean society, we are all with the families and the victims and the survivors of this tragic incident. And what these distraught families have been most angry and sad about is the lack of progress or the slow progress of search and rescue operations down in Korea's southwestern coast, and weather has played a big factor. Let's now go to our Michelle Park for a check on the weather conditions right now. Michelle, what is the weather looking like?
Well, the weather has finally cleared up and taken a turn for the better now. It's in Jindo, with the tides coming in at heights of 2.6 meters, but they will diminish even more throughout the day. Now, also the fog has cleared up with visibility currently up to 13 kilometers, which is making it easier for the rescuers to maneuver underwater. The times of the slow tides have came quite early today. 2 of the tides have already passed, leaving one more expected today at 5:55 p.m. local time, which will last for about an hour. Now, currently the water temperature in Jindo is at 11.6 degrees, with winds blowing at 7 to 11 meters per second, and the height of the waves at 0.5 to 1.5 meters, which is considered calm, will and help them out the underwater rescue efforts. Well, that's all I have at this moment. Back to you, Connyoung.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. And that's all from me at this hour. Our special coverage on the nation's search and rescue efforts for survivors in Korea's ferry disaster continues here on Arirang. Join us again at the top of the hour.